I don't get it. Why do they keep making these? I mean, I do get it. They want to have money, and making a remake of one of the most beloved animated features of all time is going to make them money in live action. But how can they make it so much less impressive than the animated film? It's no secret that I don't like the live action Disney remakes, but this one is by far the one that has sort of pushed me over the edge into making me, like, really despise the film. First of all, this film is remaking one of the most recent animated films they've done. Jungle Book, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty, they were all from more than half a century ago. While with Beauty and the Beast, it was just over a couple decades ago that it came out. And yeah, it's over 25 years old now, but it still holds up really well. I've rewatched this film many times and I love it. It's one of the best Disney films there is. But what this remake did is suck all of the charm and beauty, no pun intended, out of the original film to make just a soulless cash grab. I knew I was not going to like this film going in, but I really knew I was going to despise it after they put in something that was taken out of the original because it was long and awkward. And that was the original introduction of explaining the backstory. Rather than using the stained glass windows like in the original animated film, they actually show what would happen, and you just sort of like hate the people in the castle and the beast himself, or I guess the prince at that time, and you don't like these people because they're kind of assholes. So putting that in there in the beginning already makes you hate the characters, rather than just the mysteriousness of the original film where there's the stained glass windows showing the story. So it was a bit more mysterious, and you didn't really know the characters until you first saw them with Maurice going into the castle. So in this, it's just, like I said, it loses its charm. And they add a lot of unnecessary fluff into the story, making a 1 hour and 40-minute movie into a 2 hour and, like, 10-minute movie. There are some things I did like that they added, like a couple of the songs I thought were pretty good. And they flesh out Belle's father a bit more, but everything else, I just did not like. The Be Our Guest sequence, I don't know how they did it, but they made it seem a lot more boring than it is in the animated version. There's one part at the end of the song that looks pretty good visually, but everything else just looks very ugly. And speaking of that, the characters in general look pretty ugly. Ugly in a sense that they're too complicated in their designs. Lumiere, Cogsworth, and Mrs. Potts, they just don't look like they should. And when looking at them on the back of this Blu-ray case, you can see just how simplistic the designs are, but they're very recognizable, and you fall in love with them immediately. And with this movie, they're just so weird. The Lumiere, he's just like a man that has candles on his hands and his head, and it's just, that's not creative at all. And Mrs. Potts, instead of having her nose like part of the teapots, it's just drawn on. The only one that was sort of creative was Cogsworth with the gears moving with his mouth. And I thought that was pretty interesting, but it still looked pretty ugly. But by far the ugliest one was the wardrobe. And she has like these like ribbons for her eyes, and it just looks really bad. And when she talks, you can't really tell like where her mouth is coming from. Then there's the design of the Beast. The Beast looks too human. Instead of being ugly, he looks like more handsome. And if they were going to go completely CG with this, why didn't they just go all out and make him look a lot more like the Beast does here? Instead, they made him like more handsome, and at that point, why didn't you just go with practical effects if you're going to do that? Then there's the relationship with Belle and the Beast, and it doesn't feel like it goes naturally in this movie compared to the original. I mean, some people can argue that about the original, but in this one, it just feels like it doesn't belong at all. They added in so much fluff that they forgot to flesh out the relationships. I do sort of like where they were going with LeFou and Gaston, but by the end, it was kind of pointless. There is actually a point where LeFou says, "Oh, I'm not on Gaston's side anymore." So you're having your character actually say that they're not on the bad side anymore. That is some terrible writing. I guess you can sort of see it happening where LeFou is like, "I don't know about this anymore," but it doesn't happen enough. This movie feels very cluttered and completely misses the point of the original. The new renditions of the songs are alright, but for some reason I felt more embarrassed watching this movie than watching the animated movie. I'll never be embarrassed of watching animated movies because I love animation, But for some reason, during this movie, I was just cringing and just like sinking in my seat because of the way the actors were acting in this film. And I don't know what it is about it, but I felt it was juvenile for some reason. I rarely ever feel that way about a movie, but for this, I was embarrassed to see it. The entire time, I was just thinking about how much I'd rather be watching the original movie. I know a lot of people have said it already, but the live-action remake does make me appreciate the original animated version that much more. If you've seen the trailers for the live-action one and think that you might like it, you might, but if you think you're gonna hate it, you most likely will, like I did. I don't think it's the most terrible movie in the world, but comparing it to what it was trying to remake, there's no contest. If you haven't seen the original animated Beauty and the Beast and are thinking about seeing the live-action one and just skipping the animated one, please just watch the animated one because it's just far, far superior to the live-action one. So if you've seen the live-action Beauty and the Beast, tell me down in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, by now we're getting a bit used to winter. We're like soldiers in the middle of a campaign, growing hardened to discomfort and better able to take